What's up, it's Andre, and today I want to talk about the final episode of DuckTales, titled The Last Adventure. It was a 3-part mini-series episode that wrapped up the entire DuckTales series that we got that started back in 2017. This, of course, being the reboot of the classic 80s series that not only featured a lot of DuckTales references as well as new stuff, but also integrated a lot of Disney Afternoon things as well. Became basically a Disney Afternoon universe. Definitely been keeping up with the show as much as I could. I will be honest, I have not watched every single episode, particularly in this 3rd season. I'm probably going to watch the whole thing when it comes out on Disney Plus. The first 2 seasons are already there, but I thought with this being a grand finale, a 3-part episode, it was at least worth talking about. Luckily, the show was really good at pointing a lot of things out in case you hadn't been caught up completely with the series, while still having a lot, I do mean a lot, of really cool DuckTales and Disney Afternoon references scattered throughout, which that's what got me excited. That's what I've always loved about this show. Spoiler alert, this is definitely going to have a lot of spoilers for DuckTales. This episode is actually available on DisneyNow.com. Usually the episodes are locked because you have to use your cable provider, but with this episode, apparently it's wide open with ads. If you want to watch this finale, you can do so. They also have an episode that's available called Quack Pack. The ducks are trapped in a sitcom to escape regular life. Pretty much WandaVision before WandaVision came out. The episode starts out with Webby's birthday. They're having a big birthday party and a lot of characters from the series are there. You got Gladstone Gander, you got Daisy Duck, the 3 Caballeros, you got Darkwing Duck and Gosalyn, GizmoDuck is there. A lot of Webby's friends like Lena and Violet, and of course Huey, Dewey, Louie, Scrooge, Donald, all the whole gang. Della Duck is there, Huey, Dewey, Louie's mom, who was on the moon but now is back with them. Everyone's there and they're having a good party time, but you also notice they're being a little odd, and it's because they're pretending that they're not also about to infiltrate FOWL, because they know that FOWL is watching them. FOWL, of course, is the evil organization that has been trying to stop Scrooge McDuck and his family from all their adventures and also collecting all the things that they collect on their adventures. They're led by Bradford Buzzard, who's this old evil businessman Buzzard. He actually was Scrooge's accountant for a while, but then, of course, over time throughout the series, they're like, oh yeah, you're also evil. Other characters on FOWL include Steelbeak, you might remember from the original Darkwing Duck series, and Don Carnage from TaleSpin. They have been in previous episodes and they're in this one as well. Thought that was really cool. And FOWL is also a reference to the evil organization from Darkwing Duck, the original Darkwing Duck series. By the time that they get there, FOWL has already left, but what they left behind are 2 clone girl ducks named May and June. Now, if you're a Disney fan, you might know that May and June are part of April, May, and June, who are usually seen as Daisy Duck's nieces. They also are in another series that's on Disney Plus right now called The Legend of the 3 Caballeros. But in this, they seem to be clones that FOWL has made. And because they are clones of Webby, obviously they look at Webby as their sister. Webby, of course, has not really had a family other than her grandmother, Mrs. Beagle. So now she feels like she has some sisters here. But of course, they're clones made by FOWL, who is against Scrooge and crew. So of course, they don't trust these clones. But Webby's like, that's my family. At the same time, Donald's like, I gotta get out of here. That's the worst Donald Duck impression. I will never do that again. Donald actually wants to go on a trip with Daisy. Della's a little upset about this because obviously with her being on the moon for so much of a time, she didn't get to experience a lot of time with her brother Donald. So she's a little upset that he's going away. But he's like, look, I got all these adventures that just happen around here. I got this girl now, Daisy. We got to go out. We got to get away. So he wants to take this trip with her. He even pulls out outfits he wants to take with him. And one of his outfits is the Hawaiian shirt that he wore from Quack Pack, the old show Quack Pack. And then later on in the episode, when he's about to leave, he actually wears the classic Donald Duck outfit. But of course, Donald doesn't leave. He has to get back into the adventure because May and June, of course, end up being evil for FOWL, or at least for right now, because FOWL basically told them if they are able to collect some of the artifacts that Scrooge has been able to collect throughout his various adventures and bring them back to him, then he will tell them the truth about their existence. He will let them know their entire backstory, which of course means knowing more of what Webby's backstory is. So at first she wants to help them, but when she doesn't cooperate the way they want to, or when other people start to get suspicious of them, eventually they just got to go at it the old-fashioned way. Steal stuff and fight, folks. We get a fight between Webby and June, and I love that at one point June drinks a drink that's nearby and uses it to her advantage. That drink being gummy berry juice. So she drinks some gummy berry juice and starts bouncing here and there and everywhere. And there's actually a whole episode about that, a flashback episode that DuckTales had where Scrooge and Mrs. Beakley were agents of Shush, which is also a reference to Darkwing Duck, but the secret organization that goes up against FOWL. And one of their early missions was finding the secret of gummy berry juice. Webby gets kidnapped, as well as Huey, as May and June take the artifacts back to FOWL. But Webby was able to capture June and swap clothes, so now she's pretending to be June while trying to infiltrate. Meanwhile, Huey is sneaking around trying to figure out what's going on. But eventually, Huey does get caught by Bradford Buzzard. You might remember from the original series that Huey, Dewey, and Louie are all junior woodchucks and always looked at the Junior Woodchuck guidebook. So in this series, Huey is the main one that's into that, and we find out that Bradford was the first junior woodchuck. His grandmother founded the entire organization, but Bradford wasn't a really good woodchuck because he didn't like adventuring. So of course, with Huey and Webby duck-napped, the entire gang has to go save them. So we get everybody going: Scrooge, Huey, Dewey, and Louie, Violet, Lena, Gosalyn, Darkwing Duck, GizmoDuck, Della. Mrs. Beakley, she goes rogue. She's like, I'm gonna go handle this myself. Don't follow me. But of course they follow her. And we just get these constant battles back and forth between some of our hero characters, some of our villain characters. We get Don Carnage. We get the Phantom Blot from the Mickey Mouse comics. He was in an earlier episode too, but in this series, he's someone who hates magic. He's basically like the after credit scenes of Doctor Strange when Mordo, he's like, I gotta get rid of all magic. He actually even has some magic captured, which happens to be Gene the Genie from the DuckTales movie. You remember Gene the Genie? Except in this version, he's voiced by Jaleel White, because they had a whole episode where Gene the Genie made a sitcom world for Donald so you wouldn't have to go adventuring, which is basically like WandaVision. And so who better to have a voice of a genie that makes a sitcom world than a sitcom actor like Jaleel White, who played Urkel? I'm telling y'all, this show, it's impressive. They even throw in a DuckTales video game reference. Scrooge McDuck is fighting some of the bad guys. He actually jumps on his pogo stick, just like in the DuckTales video game. And just when you think this show could not do enough Disney afternoon references, there's been this running gag about this headless horse. So instead of them having a headless horseman, they have a headless horse named Manny, and they put a Scrooge McDuck statue bust head on him. And he's been around the entire time, not talking. If he ever talks, he like clops his foot. But oh my gosh. So the Phantom Blot uses this power on Manny, try to capture him in stone. It brings his horse body to stone, but it brings his head back to life, because that's the power of it. It brings inanimate objects to life, and vice versa. So his head, the statue head, becomes alive, but his horse body turns into stone. So I thought that was pretty funny. But then Lena, who's related to Magica and deSpell, but she turns good, she uses her power to bring him back to life completely. And the way he comes back to life, he literally goes, I live again! And he's voiced by Keith David. You see who we go over here? They're pulling a Gargoyles reference. And I was like, oh my God. So first time he goes, I live again. But then that's when he got turned into statue afterwards. But this time he's all like, I live again. And they do the full like looping around. His actual horse head comes out. He gets the wings like Goliath, and they show the close up of his eyeball coming together. And the entire time they're playing something that sounds exactly like the Gargoyles theme. And I was like, oh my God, that is amazing. This show never stops with figuring out creative ways of doing Disney afternoon references. I'm going to miss it just for that alone. Eventually, Scrooge meets up with Bradford Buzzard, and we find out his diabolical plan. He wants to end all of adventuring because Bradford Buzzard is a businessman. So he realizes that if he has control of everything, if everything is calm, then he is able to enable the market to his whim to make profit. But every time that Scrooge and his friends and anyone else in the world goes adventuring, it brings chaos into the world, and the chaos doesn't allow him to control it to make for good business decisions, because adventuring and chaos is unpredictable. So he wants to stop adventures so he can make that money. Basically, if he puts everyone in a controlled state, does not let them be creative or adventurous or learn more about the world, then he can basically control the world to his whim to make money off of them for being so mindless about what's out there. That is never a thing that would happen in the real world. Ever. Oh my God. I want to be a duck now. I even love his speech where it's like, we've seen flying bears, bouncing bears, a troop of goofs. Because Goofy was even on this show at one point. He shows all these images of all the adventures that Scrooge has been on. He shows all these pictures of past episodes, but also more references to the Rescue Rangers. You see GizmoDuck, Darkwing Duck, Bubba Duck, TaleSpin. We see Kit Cloud Kicker. They did this whole thing where Kit is now grown up and taking Baloo's place. He's being chased by a bear with butterfly wings, which I'm guessing is a Wuzzles reference. I'll take it. Anything that is even remotely close to the Wuzzles, I will accept. Disney Plus, put the Wuzzles on Disney Plus, please. Don't act like the Wuzzles didn't exist. I remember them. We in the land of Wuzz. We having twice the fun, because every single thing is really 2 in 1. I remember that. Bumbleye, Butterbear, Ellaroo. Bradford has basically captured everyone. Everyone that you have seen on this show, he has trapped in a cage. And while GizmoDuck, Darkwing Duck, and Launchpad try to free them, it doesn't help that Steelbeak shows up and is using a ray to not only make himself smarter, Steelbeak also uses the ray to mind control Flintheart, Glomgold, and the Beagle Boys to fight on his behalf. I think they would probably have done it on their own anyway, but Darkwing Duck's captured now. GizmoDuck is captured. Kit, Molly from TaleSpin, who's now also grown up. The Rescue Rangers, Gandra D, Fenton's girlfriend. Ludwig Von Drake is up in here. Gyro Gearloose. I forgot about Gyro Gearloose. He's up in this too. And now it's Launchpad alone having to fight Flintheart, Glomgold, the Beagle Boys, and Steelbeak. Dun dun dun. GizmoDuck doesn't have his armor anymore, so he's just Fenton. But he and Darkwing Duck talked to Launchpad and said, hey man, we might be heroes, but you're the one that inspired us to be heroes. And you see them talking, you see the Rescue Rangers cheering them on, you see other characters from the show like aliens from the moon, Storkules, and all these other characters. And then Launchpad tries to say blather and blatherskite, but he says it wrong. The GizmoDuck suit's just like, close enough. And then Launchpad becomes GizmoDuck. You see the whole transformation. And I could be wrong, but when Launchpad turned into GizmoDuck and they're playing this very like, you know, superhero epic music, but I heard a little bit of, which you know is that little beat in the moon theme, you know. And they've already used the moon theme before on this show. When Della Duck was on the moon, she had a lullaby that she sang, and the lullaby was set to the tune of the moon theme. But I felt like that little, I felt like that was in Launchpad's music when he was turning into GizmoDuck. There's so many references in this thing. I'm just gonna find references at this point. We get lots of fights back and forth, but it's not looking good for anyone. So Bradford is like, look, Scrooge, I've opened up this portal reality, which came from the Darkwing Duck episode, but this time you don't go anywhere. But I'm going to make a deal with you. If you sign this contract saying you don't adventure anymore, then everybody gets let go. And to prove I'm serious, I'll even throw my own henchmen in, destroy them. I was like, dang, there's this one character, Black Herring. She was the one that worked with FOWL and got the gummy berry juice formula back in the day, but it's still been a nuisance to this day. He just threw her in. She's like, I'm done with you. And she's like, you're a good villain. He's like, I'm not a villain. I'm a businessman. Scrooge, sign this contract and we good. And this contract was like this magically binding contract that he had to sign. So if you sign it, it's like you are literally binded to it with chains, which I was like, is that a Mickey's Christmas Carol reference? But that was also the reason why Bradford needed to make those clones, because he couldn't get that paper. He needed someone from Scrooge's legacy, a descendant of his, to be able to do it. And the reason why he was able to do it eventually with Webby is because May and June were clones of Webby through a project called Project 87, which I think is really cool because 87, I believe, is the year that DuckTales came out. Well, Webby was created herself. She's April. So April, May, and June. We find out through this flashback that Mrs. Beakley found a FOWL base and was trying to take it down. FOWL had left, but they had left a little baby behind. That was Webby as a baby created in a lab. Mrs. Beakley was like, I can't leave this kid here. So she took little Webby away, then met up with Scrooge. They took care of her, gave her the name Webby Vanderquack so that she would never know that she was actually made in a lab by FOWL under the name of April. And then FOWL apparently made clones of her, and that's how we got May and June. But April was actually created using Scrooge's DNA. That's how they're able to make her initially. So technically, because Scrooge's DNA was used to make Webby, Webby is technically Scrooge's daughter. Does that make sense? Because that makes Webby a descendant of Scrooge, that's why she was able to get this contract for Scrooge to sign. Scrooge wants to keep his family safe because he cares about his family, both those of blood and those not of blood. So he signs the contract, he's buying it down, and they're no longer allowed to have adventures. And Buzzard's like, I'm about to take you out. But everyone comes in to save the day, protect Scrooge. And then they just are like, if we can find a loophole in the contract, it'll break the bind. The contract says Scrooge is not allowed to do any adventures ever again. Huey, Dewey, and Louie were like, well, family is the greatest adventure of them all. Buzzard's like, that can't be serious. Contract is like, that's serious. Kablooey. The contract goes away. Scrooge is free. Everyone's free. Flintheart and the Beagle boys are like, what's up? We bad guys, but you went too far, Buzzard. Magica DeSpell turns Bradford Buzzard into an actual Buzzard, like one that doesn't talk. May and June, now part of the group. Donald even says he'll take May and June with him on his trip with Daisy. Everyone's happy until freaking Launchpad messes up once again, presses the back door to the plane. Everyone falls out. And then we get this nice end credit sequence where all the characters that we know and love are slowly falling out. And we get to see them all again. We get to see Fenton and Gandra D, which is a reference to the original DuckTales, but they have Gandra D in this show, holding hands, love with each other. He turns into GizmoDuck, Darkwing Duck with Launchpad and Gosalyn, Violet and Lena, Huey, Dewey, Louie, Webby, Scrooge, Mrs. Beakley, Gyro, Gearloose. I forgot about Gyro, Gearloose. He's up in this too. They're all there saying their goodbyes. That's DuckTales. Until this supposed podcast that they're doing. Apparently making a podcast called This Duckburg Life, where it's going to be future adventures of DuckTales in podcast form. So there you go. So like I said, I did not watch and recap every single episode of DuckTales, but every time I watched it, I have absolutely enjoyed it because I believe that DuckTales is a great example of how you do a reboot. It does just enough new stuff to capture new audiences without going so far that it's unrecognizable from the original brand. At the same time, it does all these great references to the past, not only of DuckTales, but to the Disney afternoon, but not going too far to the point where it's just references and not trying anything new. And with those references, they also figure out a way to make the references work in their story. So there are new interpretations of things that we remember from the past, as opposed to just being there for reference's sake. With the exception of Bonkers. Bonkers just showed up one time in a picture because it's Bonkers. That's all you need. So it gave you enough of the new, well, enough of what you remember. And I think that's a great way to do a reboot, doing something that's brand new to the franchise while at the same time understanding the heart and soul of what made that franchise popular to begin with. And even when doing references to it, being able to do it in a way that makes sense in your story while still giving a little bit of a nod to where it all originally came from. And the fact that they were able to create a Disney afternooniverse in the process of making this show is very impressive. The people that worked on the show clearly loved DuckTales, clearly loved the Disney afternoon to make classic stuff feel new again while still being nostalgic, which is very hard to pull off, but they did it with this show. I really think that they did, and I'm just very much impressed with everything they've done. Were you a fan of the new DuckTales? And if so, what did you think of the finale? Or if you have not watched the new DuckTales, does this interest you at all? Do you think you'll check it out? And is there any other cartoon that you would hope gets this same kind of love and care in reboot form that you would like to see? I mean, they did pull a Goliath Gargoyles reference up in this, so, you know, is it possible? Thank you so much for watching. Give this video a thumbs up if you like it. Liking my videos definitely helps me out. And if you're new here, make sure you subscribe and check out all the videos that I make. I love you like a play cousin, I'm outie. Woo!